Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Shmaila. Today I am going to take your lecture on acute diarrheal diseases and worm infestations. The learning objectives of today are: at the end of the sessions, the students will be able to discuss the epidemiology of acute diarrheal diseases, suggest strategies to prevent and control diarrhea, understand the epidemiology of worm infestation, and enlist the control and preventive measures for worm infestation. Diarrhea is defined as the passage of loose, liquid or watery stool. It is a recent change in consistency and character of stool. Now the diarrheal diseases, they can be caused by gastrointestinal pathology or some non-digestive pathology. For example, through ENT infection, respiratory tract infection, urinary tract infection and even simple teething can lead to diarrhea. There are certain disorders, metabolic disorders such as enzyme deficiencies which can also lead to diarrhea. So all these diarrheal diseases, uh, because of having the predominant symptom of diarrhea, they are grouped in one category. There are four clinical types of diarrhea: acute watery diarrhea, acute bloody diarrhea, persistent diarrhea, and diarrhea with severe malnutrition. Acute watery diarrhea lasts several hours to days. The main danger is dehydration. Weight loss occurs if feeding is not continued. The pathogens that usually cause acute diarrhea, they include Vibrio cholera, E. coli bacteria or rotavirus. Now the acute bloody diarrhea, it is also called dysentery. The main dangers are damage of the intestinal mucosa, sepsis and malnutrition. Other complications which can occur is dehydration. It is marked by visible blood in the stool. The most common cause of bloody diarrhea is Shigella, which is a bacteria, and it is also a most common cause of severe cases. Persistent diarrhea is the diarrhea which lasts for 14 days or longer. The main danger in persistent diarrhea is malnutrition and serious non-intestinal infection and dehydrations. Persons suffering from AIDS, usually they can develop persistent diarrhea. Diarrhea with severe malnutrition, there are certain conditions of malnutrition such as marasmus and kwashiorkor. They can also lead to diarrhea. The burden of the diarrheal diseases is huge. It is the second leading cause of death in children less than 5 years of age. Each year, diarrhea kills around 525,000 children under the age of 5 years. However, a significant proportion of diarrheal disease can be prevented through safe drinking water and adequate sanitation and hygiene. Globally, there are nearly 1.7 billion cases of childhood diarrheal diseases every year. Diarrhea is the leading cause of malnutrition in children under 5 years of age. Now let us look at the picture in Pakistan. In Pakistan, 60% of the infant and child deaths are caused by diarrhea. Pakistan has the highest ratio in Asia for infant mortality from diarrhea. The World Health Organization has ranked Pakistan 23rd in terms of childhood mortality caused by diarrheal illness, with almost 6.4 million cases of pediatric diarrhea annually. Now there are certain indicators that can be used to determine the burden of diarrheal diseases. I will discuss these indicators one by one. One of the indicators is to determine the diarrhea prevention. How the diarrhea prevention is determined? It is determined by calculating the percentage of people using improved drinking water sources. Mean higher the percentage of people using improved drinking water sources, less is the prevalence of diarrhea. Similarly, if the percentage of people using improved sanitation facilities is more, then the diarrhea will be less. Also, the prevention of diarrhea can be determined by determining the percentage of 1-year-old immunized against measles, because diarrhea is a very common complication of measles and a lot of cases of diarrhea occurs in measles. So, if we determine the percentage of the children who are immunized for the measles, then we can determine the burden of diarrhea. Further, because diarrhea leads to malnutrition and underweight and stunted, by determining the percentage of children who are underweight and stunted, we can have an idea about the burden of diarrhea. Further, vitamin A supplementation coverage rate can also give us the idea of the burden of diarrhea, because vitamin A has a role in protecting the inner epithelium of the intestine. So it also vitamin A supplementation also helps in prevention of diarrhea. So greater the coverage of vitamin A supplementation, less is the prevalence of diarrhea. Burden of diarrhea can also be determined by calculating the percentage of children under 5 years of age with diarrhea who have received ORT, that is the oral rehydration therapy, ORS packets, recommended homemade fluid, increased fluids and continued feeding. Means that greater the utilization of these fluids and supplements, less is the prevalence of diarrhea. Use of oral rehydration therapy. The percentage of children under 5 years of age with diarrhea using oral rehydration therapy. This oral rehydration therapy can be given through ORS packet or homemade fluids or increased fluids with continued feeding. So greater the use of oral rehydration therapy, better is the outcome in the children having diarrhea. There are certain microorganisms such as viruses, bacteria and other organisms that are involved in causing diarrhea. Among viruses, the most common virus which is found in developing countries is rotavirus. Rotavirus is the leading cause of severe dehydration diarrhea in children less than 5 years of age. The fatal outcome occurs predominantly in low income countries because it is universal in occurrence, that is it occurs worldwide. Clean water and good hygiene have little effect on its transmission. Other viruses which can cause diarrhea are adenoviruses, enteroviruses and coronavirus. Among the bacteria which are involved in causing diarrhea, those which are found commonly in developing countries, they are enterotoxigenic E. coli, Shigella, Campylobacter jejuni, Vibrio cholera, Salmonella and enteropathogenic E. coli. Enterotoxigenic E. coli is an important cause of acute watery diarrhea in adults and children in developing countries. Also, it is the most common cause of prevalence diarrhea. It is responsible for about 1/3 to 1/2 of all the diarrheal episodes in travelers to Africa, Asia and Latin America. Shigella, it is associated with dysentery, and Vibrio cholera, it leads to rice water stools. Amoebiasis, giardiasis and other intestinal parasitic infections are also associated with diarrhea. Giardiasis is recognized cause of diarrhea. It flourishes in the duodenum and jejunum and it can be present in very large number and it can obstruct the lumen of intestine and it can smother the epithelial surface. Cryptosporidium is a coccidian parasite that causes diarrhea in infants, immunodeficient patients and a variety of domestic animals. It is also common in AIDS patients. In addition to this, there are other causes of diarrhea such as ENT infection, respiratory or urinary infection, malaria, bacterial meningitis, teething, malnutrition, inborn errors of metabolism and severe septicemia or necrotizing enterocolitis. Now the reservoirs of these bacteria, they can be humans and animals. Humans are usually humans are usually reservoirs of E. coli, Shigella and Vibrio cholera. Campylobacter jejuni and Salmonella, they are found in animals. Host factor which aggravate diarrhea, they are the malnutrition and infection. There is a vicious circle, that is malnutrition causes infection, infection causes diarrhea, and diarrhea causes malnutrition, and the circle goes on. Similarly, poverty and lack of hygiene also aggravates diarrhea. Prematurity can also lead to diarrhea as there is decreased immunity, and incorrect feeding practices can also be associated with diarrhea. The cause of diarrhea in children 6 months to 2 years of age are declining maternal antibodies, lack of active immunity, contaminated food, and direct contact with feces. In children less than 6 months of age, the cause of diarrhea are cow milk, infant feeding formula. Now the environmental factors which favor diarrhea, among them warm and rainy seasons favor bacterial diarrhea, and winter and dry seasons they favor viral diarrhea, especially rotavirus diarrhea. The mode of transmission of all of these microorganisms causing diarrhea is the fecal-oral route. Through this, the organisms may be waterborne, foodborne, or they can be transmitted through direct transmission. Now, how the diarrheal diseases can be controlled? WHO has given a program called Diarrheal Disease Control Program to control the diarrhea. So, it has given both the short-term strategies and the long-term strategies. In the short-term strategies comes appropriate clinical management of the cases, and for long-term strategy, there should be better mother and child health care practices, preventive strategies, and prevention of the diarrheal epidemics. For appropriate clinical management, there are certain interventions. We will discuss them one by one. First comes oral rehydration therapy. Oral rehydration treatment can be safely and successfully used in treating acute diarrhea due to all causes, in all age groups and in all countries. The aim of oral fluid therapy is to prevent dehydration and reduce mortality. The solution which is recommended by WHO for the oral rehydration therapy is ORS. One packet of ORS is added in 1 liter of water. It contains important electrolytes which help in replacing the electrolyte loss during diarrhea. Previously, it contained sodium bicarbonate, which is now replaced by trisodium citrate. Trisodium citrate makes the solution more stable. It also decreases the stool output, and it increases the absorption of sodium and water from the intestines. Nowadays, another formulation of ORS is available, which is called low osmolar ORS. The osmolarity is reduced. This preparation is as safe and effective as the regular ORS. However, it has some additional benefits also. It decreases the need of IV fluids. It decreases the stool output, that is, it decreases the frequency of the diarrhea and the volume of the fluid loss in diarrhea. It also decreases vomiting, and it can be given in both cholera and non-cholera diarrhea. The benefit of oral rehydration therapy is that it is cost effective, it is easily afforded by common man, and also it is easily available at the market and drugstores. It is easy to prepare. You just have to take a packet of ORS and mix it into water. It can be given at home, that is, no medical expertise are required. Once the mother is trained about how to prepare ORS solution, it can be easily given at home by mother or some other person. If it is not available in the market, then it can be made at home. The method of preparing ORS at home is add 1 level teaspoon of salt and 6 level teaspoon of sugar in 1 liter of water. In some countries, there are certain other types of fluid which are given during diarrhea. They are rice water, soup, yogurt drink, and coconut water. However, these drinks do not contain salt, so it's better to add salt in these fluids when they are given for the treatment of diarrhea. However, there are certain fluids which should not be given in diarrhea because they causes osmotic diarrhea. These fluids should be avoided. These are carbonated drinks such as Pepsi, Mirinda, 7-Up, etc. Commercial fruit juices such as sliced juice, Nestle juices, they should not be given in diarrhea. Sweetened tea, coffee, they have diuretic actions and should also be avoided during diarrhea. Also, fluids which have purgative effect, they should also be avoided during diarrhea. Intravenous dehydration is given in case of severe dehydration. The fluid of choice for severe dehydration is Ringer lactate. It is recommended by WHO. Also, diarrhea treatment solution can be given, which is also recommended by WHO. However, normal saline is the last in choice because normal saline do not provide potassium and also it doesn't correct acidosis which occurs in diarrhea. So it's better to use, it is recommended to use Ringer lactate and diarrhea treatment solution by WHO. Maintenance therapy is given once the individual has recovered from severe dehydration, then the oral fluids are started. There is a mistaken assumption that it is important to rest the gut during diarrhea. The correct view is that during episodes of diarrhea, normal food intake should be promoted as soon as the child, whatever its age, is able to eat. This is especially relevant for the exclusively breastfed infants. Chemotherapy, it should be given only when the exact cause is known because most of the time the diarrhea is corrected with the help of fluid replacement. So when the exact cause is known, then the appropriate antibiotic can be prescribed. In case of cholera, doxycycline, tetracycline, erythromycin and trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole can be given. For Shigella, the drug of choice is ciprofloxacin. When a zinc supplement is given during an episode of acute diarrhea, it reduces the episode's duration and severity. In addition, zinc supplements given for 10 to 14 days lower the incidence of diarrhea in the following 2 to 3 months. WHO and UNICEF therefore recommend daily 10 mg of zinc for infants under 6 months of age and 20 mg for children older than 6 months for 10 to 14 days. The long-term prevention of diarrhea, it can be done by having better mother and child health care practices, preventive strategies and preventing diarrheal epidemics. By improving maternal and child nutrition, the prevalence and incidence of diarrhea can be reduced. If the nutrition of the mother is well maintained both before the childbirth and after the childbirth, then it reduces the low birth weight and it improves the quality of breast milk. Child nutrition can be improved by promoting breastfeeding, appropriate weaning practices, supplementary feeding and vitamin A supplementation. Diarrhea can also be prevented by using certain strategies, for example, by improving sanitation, which can be done through improved water supply, improved excreta disposal, and improved domestic and food hygiene. Further, diarrheal diseases can also be prevented with the help of health education. Breastfeeding should be promoted as the breastfeeding they decrease the frequency and duration of diarrhea. Children who are breastfed, they have lower risk of developing severe diarrhea and death. So breastfeeding should be continued and the bottle feeding should be discouraged. Also, the commercially available formulas, they can cause diarrhea, so they should also be not encouraged. Further, improving weaning can also have a role in prevention of diarrhea. Weaning should not be started before the age of 6 months, and after 6 months it should be well started. Diarrhea can also be prevented by using clean drinking water and use of abundant water for hygiene. Latrines should be used because defecation in open air can also lead to spread of diarrhea. Further, there should be proper disposal of stools. Immunization can also be used to prevent diarrhea. Immunization against measles and rotavirus can help in reducing the burden of diarrhea. Further, fly control is also important in prevention of diarrhea because flies are involved in the transmission of the organisms from one place to another. There should be regular surveillance system for detecting the outbreaks of diarrhea. Strengthening the epidemiological surveillance system helps in controlling and prevention of diarrheal epidemics. Also, there is an important role of primary health care in preventing diarrhea as there is intersectoral collaboration. So, various activities such as water supply and excreta disposal, communicable disease control, mother and child health, nutrition and health education, they can all work together to ultimately control the diarrheal diseases. WHO has proposed a plan called Integrated Global Action Plan for the Prevention and Control of Pneumonia and Diarrhea. Its target is that by the end of 2025, there should be 90% full dose coverage of each relevant vaccines, that is the vaccines which are given during diarrhea, given for the prevention of diarrhea such as rotavirus vaccine and measles vaccine, they should be given to at least 90% of the target population. Further, uh, there should be 90% access to appropriate pneumonia and diarrhea case management and at least 50% coverage of exclusive breastfeeding during first 6 months. Further, there should be virtual elimination of pediatric HIV because pediatric HIV is also associated with persistent diarrhea. Now, soil transmitted helminths. Soil transmitted helminths, these are the infections which refer to a group of parasitic disease in humans caused by intestinal roundworms, hookworms and whipworm. It is the most common infections worldwide and it affects almost one-fourth of the world population. That is 24% of the world population is infected and it makes around 1.5 billion people. It is widely distributed in sub-Saharan Africa, South America, China and Asia. The soil transmitted helminthes are basically transmitted by eggs that are passed in the feces of infected person. The adult worms live in the intestine and produce thousands of eggs which are then spread through the fecal-oral route. The eggs are transmitted through because the eggs are present on the surfaces of unwashed vegetable and salad, so they can be transmitted through them if they are not properly washed, peeled or cooked. The eggs can also be transmitted through the contaminated water sources and they are commonly transmitted among the children who play in soil because after playing in soil they put the contaminated fingers into mouth. Now roundworms. Roundworms are caused by the agent called Escherichia lumbricoides. It is an infection of intestinal tract. The live worms are passed in stool and vomitus. After ingestion, the female worm, it produces around 240,000 eggs per day in the intestine. These eggs are then excreted in the feces and then they grow in the external environment and they are embryonated. After that, they are ingested by man through contaminated fingers. These eggs once reach the intestine, they hatch and the larvae come out. The larvae then penetrate through the gut wall and enter into the bloodstream. Through bloodstream, it reaches liver and lungs, and through lungs it reaches trachea and can be coughed up and swallowed. According to WHO, A heavy infection of roundworm is said when there are equal to or more than 50,000 eggs per gram of feces. Man is the only reservoir of this worm. Feces containing fertilized eggs are the main source of transmission of this disease. It is more common in children and it can cause malnutrition and may compete for vitamin A. And ultimately, it can lead to vitamin A deficiency in the children suffering with roundworms. There are certain environmental conditions which favor the transmission of roundworms. The eggs remain viable in soil for months to years if there is appropriate temperature, moisture, oxygen pressure and ultraviolet radiation. The eggs of roundworms are commonly found in clay soil. The spread of roundworms also occurred due to open air defecation. The period of communicability is until all eggs are destroyed and stools are negative for any egg or ova. The symptoms which occur in roundworm infestation are diarrhea, abdominal pain and general weakness. The migration of the larva can cause fever, cough, asthma, skin rash and eosinophilia. Heavy infestation by the roundworms can cause intestinal obstruction, intussusception, volvulus and perforation of ileocecal region. It can also perforate into peritoneal cavity. It can block the common bile duct and lead to impaired cognition and physical development. Now hookworm infection. There are two types of hookworms, Ankylostoma duodenale and Nectar americanus, which cause hookworm infection. Once ingested, the female worm produces around 5,000 to 30,000 eggs per day in the human intestine. These eggs are then excreted in the feces. If the soil is warm and moist, the eggs hatch into larvae. After hatching, these larvae can penetrate through the skin and then they enter the bloodstream and lymphatics, and through the blood and lymphatics they reach the lungs. From lungs they reach bronchi and trachea, from where they can be coughed up and swallowed. So these are hookworm infections can occur very commonly in the farmers because they walk barefooted on the soil. So the larva of hookworm, it can penetrate through their skin and it can enter into their bloodstream. Reservoir of hookworm infections are humans. Infective material is the feces containing ova and soil with infective larva. As long as the the host harbors the parasite, the host remains infective. Hookworm infestation can occur in any age and in any gender. However, it is more common among people of the age 15 to 25 years of age. Hookworm infection can occur in a lot of people. However, in majority of the people, it is symptomless. So, if the person is healthy and he is well nourished, then he may not have any symptoms. However, those who are malnourished, they can have severe manifestation of this infestation. It is common in farmers. There is a term called host-parasite balance. In endemic areas, the inhabitants develop a host-parasite balance in which worm load is limited. They harbor the parasite without manifesting clinical signs and symptoms. In some areas, the infection rate may be 100%, but most infections are light and only a small proportion of the people are heavily infected. This delicate balance may be upset by malnutrition and intercurrent infections. These worms, they live in the upper half inch of the soil, and the environmental conditions which favor their growth are the damp, sandy or friable soil with decaying vegetation, temperature of 24 to 32 degrees centigrade, oxygen, moisture, rainfall, shade, they all favor the growth of this worm. Further, walking barefoot and low living standard can promote the spread of this disease. Now, the adverse effect of this disease can be on individual and the community. In individual, hookworm infestation causes chronic blood loss which leads to iron deficiency anemia. And we know that iron deficiency anemia leads to retarded physical growth and development. In pregnant mothers, this iron deficiency anemia can lead to low birth weight babies, stillbirths, and abortions. It can also lead to impaired lactation. Because of anemia, there is diminished capacity of hard work, and it also leads to hypoalbuminemia. Because of causing iron deficiency anemia, hookworm infestation has an adverse effect on nutrition, growth and development. It also affects the quality of life, work and productivity, medical care cost and economy. Whipworm infection is the third most common soil transmitted helminthiasis in humans. It is common in the children of age 4 to 10 years. It is commonly found in USA and Southeast Asia. This worm lives in large intestine. It can withstand cold temperatures but not desiccation, that is dryness. It does not survive in dry seasons. The female of this worm can lay up to 200 to 10,000 eggs per day. The infection from the whipworm may be mild, moderate or severe. When the infection is mild, there is epigastric pain, nausea, vomiting and weight loss. In case of moderate infection, there is growth deficit and anemia. And in case of severe infection, there is chronic diarrhea, dysentery, dehydration, rectal prolapse, colonic obstruction, hyperproteinemia and chronic iron deficiency. Now the prevention and control of the soil transmitted. Primary prevention is the most effective strategy for interrupting the transmission of this disease. Sanitary disposal of human excreta help in prevention of the soil transmitted helminths. Provision of safe drinking water and food hygiene habits also help in preventing the soil transmitted helminths. Health education of the community also play a role in the prevention of this disease. Educating the community in using of sanitary latrine instead of open defecation, keeping a good personal hygiene, changing behavioral pattern, measure of personal protection such as wearing footwear while going in the fields and using health facilities for the early diagnosis and treatment of these infections. Now the worm infestation can also be prevented through secondary prevention. For this purpose, different drugs can be given. These are albendazole, mebendazole, levamisole and pyrantel. Albendazole is given as a single dose of 400 mg tablet. It is however contraindicated in children less than 2 years of age and in pregnancy. When mebendazole is given, it is given as 100 mg twice daily for 3 days. And again, mebendazole should also be given to the children above 2 years of age. Levamisole is also given as a single dose drug. Its dose is 2.5 mg per kg of body weight, and this drug is used in mass treatment of ascariasis, that is roundworms. Pyrantel can be given as a single dose. Its dose is 10 mg per kg of body weight. Further, anemia should be corrected by giving iron and folic acid supplementation. Hyperproteinemia and hypereosinophilia should also be treated. Now the preventive chemotherapy. WHO recommends periodic deworming without previous individual diagnosis to all the at-risk people living in endemic areas. That is, there should be periodic deworming of the population to prevent the spread of soil transmitted helminths. Now, who are the at-risk people? These are the preschool aged children, school aged children, women of childbearing age including pregnant women in their second and third trimester, and breastfeeding mothers, and adults who are involved in high risk occupations such as farmers, tea pickers or miners. When the prevalence of the infection in a community is 20%, then give the preventive chemotherapy once a year. And when the prevalence of this infection is more than 50%, then the treatment should be given twice a year. Periodic deworming can be given on various health days, for example on child health days, and it can also be done through the supplementation programs for preschool children, and it can be also given through the school health program. Drugs which are given for the prevention during these mass campaigns are albendazole and mebendazole, and these drugs can be easily administered by the non-medical persons. Thank you.